just about being disciplined, being extremely disciplined in your life with everything that's going on. Will Smith, I love Will Smith for this. He always said that fear isn't real, right? Fear isn't real, right? It's more of an emotion, right? On the other side of that fear is pure happiness. And I constantly say that to myself. Don't be afraid of taking the risk, taking the challenge. At the end of the day, you will learn something. I tell Rob this.
Each one of us has a story. Our journey has and is continuously impacting us. By listening to my guests share how they are discovering their best self, you will discover the best part of you. And thank you guys for tuning in to Discover Your Best Self podcast. I am so excited today because I have some special guests, actually a husband and wife team. This is new, so I am so excited to interview the two of them. This is Anthony and Kendra Fykes. They are the owners of Next Act Cinema. And, I believe that the reason why this is so special, number one, is because it is Black History Month. And we have some very special movies that are coming out this month. And so I will turn it over to Anthony first to just tell us, who you are and where you're from and how did you guys come up with this business concept?
Sure. So, again, thank you for having us. Much appreciated. So, we both hail right now from Baltimore County, Maryland. I'm originally from Chicago, born and bred. Kendra is from the Bahamas, but she can kind of get into that story.
Okay.
And now we live in Alexandria, but we own the movie theater it's in Pikesville, Maryland.
Okay.
We are super excited about it. One of the things that we thought about when we first opened up this movie theater is that, movies inspire, motivate, and also lift up people, right? Mm-hmm. So you have what NBA or NFL team or hockey team has not seen Rocky, right? What individual hasn't seen like Pursuit of Happiness, right? It's like those type of feelings that elicit from a movie. Mm-hmm. We wanted to inspire and give that back to people. So for us, we knew that we wanted to have something of purpose. We also knew we wanted to do something within the community. But we also knew that we wanted to do something that was a little bit different than the norm, right? So Robin and I, my business partner, came up with the idea based upon Robert having a home movie theater in his home. And so many people were like, you know what, Rob, we love this experience. We love the audio. You should do this on a much bigger scale. And so he then invited me over to be a part of that partnership. And Rob and I have known each other for a number of years, so probably about 15 years as we used to work together. And so we knew that we wanted to do something in the future. We just wasn't sure what it was. So when he invited me to this opportunity, I said, a movie theater? Wait a minute. In the day of Netflix and Amazon, why in the world would we open up a movie theater, right? And again, some of the things that we talked about, though, was what kind of experience were we going for that a consumer or a guest would come for? Mm-hmm. And so it kind of ballooned into the idea from Robert's home. And then we were like, let's see whether or not we can actually turn this into a business.
Right. And Kendra, real quick, I want to know, just because, when you're not only just doing a partnership with your husband, right, in a business, how did that sound? Were you guys doing this together? Or did he come to you like, oh, look, this is the idea that I have? And were you like, okay, let's just do this? Or how did that go? How did that conversation go?
Well, the first thing you need to know about me is that I have been a huge supporter of what I call the mogul plan for Tony, which is putting him on a path to eventually be a mini mogul, owning a bunch of different things. Mm-hmm. So Next Act Entertainment is one of the ventures that we've got. And I try to be super supportive in all of the ventures because ultimately at the end of the day, they will benefit me as well.
Exactly.
So we're in it. So I am a huge fan of the theater. It is probably the third business that Tony has started up. All of them have been successful. And so I'm really happy with the scale of this one, with the impact it has on the community. Mm-hmm. And it's been a good run so far. Tony and Robert are obviously the two that are the face of the movie theater on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. A lot of what I do with the theater is behind the scenes. So in my professional life outside of the theater, I run sales and marketing teams. So helping companies figure out the right way to grow.
Okay.
A lot of what I do for Tony and Rob is help them figure out how to take the theater to the next level. So if we've got X amount of dollars in revenue this year, how do we double, triple that across the course of 2020, and then as we look into 2021.
And is that something that you already were doing before? And you, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked at publicly traded companies, small startup companies, that sales and marketing focus, right? That focus on how do we create and accelerate growth has been what I do professionally. Tony and Robert, I don't know if they consider themselves lucky or not when I all of a sudden show up in their business. But I help them create the plan. I want to know how much money we're going to be taking home at the end of this year.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I take a lot of what I've learned and used in a corporate setting and brought it into our smaller business. And so far, so good. We'll see. Ask me again at the end of 2020. I'll let you know.
And I love that, though, because, so much of, what I see, especially with entrepreneurs and business owners, they take what they've learned from the corporate world or their previous, jobs, and they've parlayed that. And I think a lot of times we miss that. And people, they want to just jump right in and they're like, oh, I'm going to start this business, I'm going to do all these things. And they don't understand and recognize that, people like you guys who have worked and, been doing things for years and built relationships over 10, 15, 20 years, that's gotten you to the place of where you are now. And that's really what I want to touch on is, how did you get to that place and to, even getting the funding and the finance and to be able to open up a business like this? Because it is hard and it's tough for us, but we also need the support of people in the community and then, business partners who are smart and know what they're doing. So tell us about that process and getting it up and started.
Yeah, so the funding part was complicated, right? I won't sit there and lie because one of the things is that you have to think about whether or not your product that you're trying to bring out to the community or bring out to the consumer, is it actually a viable product? And we weren't really sure yet, right? Because again, we're one of maybe 3 Black-owned businesses in the entire country, right. So we didn't actually know whether or not this would be something that would be sustainable. And so what we did was we did the traditional route. We went to see whether or not was there funding for a minority-owned business in this community. And so we did our research. We knew that this area was also part of a revitalization zone in Baltimore. And so we said, okay, great. You know what? Let's see if the city and also the local banks would be willing to help us out. And so we put together a business plan, just like every other business owner does, right? We put together our business plan, and we thought that the business plan was strong. We thought it was solid. We had our financials, we had our projections, we had our purpose, we had our mission, we had everything down to its science, or so we thought. So then we went to underwriting with one of the local banks. And previous to that, about a week earlier, this individual has said, you know what, you all are on a good path right now. You all are on track to potentially get the funding. So Rob and I, we were like, you know what, great. Let's start looking at other resources that we need to bring into the theater. Lo and behold, about a week later, we got news back that said that underwriters decided not to fund the business.
And what was the reason for that?
Yep, and we were shocked. And one of the reasons why is because they said that they didn't think that this business was a long-term play for them. It wasn't something they was willing to invest in. And they said, listen, they knew the trends of movie theaters at the time, so they didn't want to support it.
And I have a question. The trend of the movie theater industry, what was that? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of dynamics at play, right? A big part of that, right, is always, okay, so what are the values of the movies that are coming out, right? So in an age of Marvel, for example, right, where everything is animated, everything is digital, things have gotten really complicated that a lot of people, from what we hear just in our community, is that there's not a lot of quality films that are being made anymore. So that's one. So I think a lot of people are still looking for, okay, they're thinking that some of the original content that Amazon, Netflix, and Hulu, they put out is better than what is being shown on the big screen. So we had that kind of dynamic at play. In addition to that, it's also a cost thing, right? So a lot of individuals feel like, well, why would I go to the movie theater when I can, and pay for a family of 4 when I can do the same thing for $9.99 a month with Netflix, right? And so there's a couple of different things. And then the other thing about movie theaters is that it's owned and dominated by a lot of big players. So you don't have opportunity as a small scale business to open up something in a market, because one of the things that we had to do when we thought about opening this space up is how many movie theaters did we have around us that was going to be competition. And then 2, we were also going to be put in a position where we may not be able to get the movies because we were up against the conglomerates that would have gotten them first. So there was a lot of things that were at play when it came to them kind of talking with us around why we think that they didn't give us funding for it.
Right. And so, Kendra, from your standpoint, like when you're looking at the business plan and the finances, what were your thoughts when you heard the news from the bank?
That we needed to find a way to fund it. I thought it was a really good idea for us to move forward. I thought it was a good business for us to get into. We've had, personal experience going into a number of different boutique theaters, right? Where you can get a glass of wine, which I care about, and watch your movie. You can have dinner in a really nice, comfortable space, and still be able to see a film. It's not just your standard movie-going experience that we're trying to create. And there's been the pop-up of all of those boutique shops in a lot of the neighborhoods that we frequent. So I understand the hesitation, right, for wanting to get into maybe big box movie theaters. We don't want to be that type of theater. We really want to keep our screen number 5 or less as we think about expansion. So we're in the boutique space. To me, that's a totally different type of space with a very specific target customer that's geared towards specific neighborhoods. That's completely different than I think, what the bank probably heard.
Right.
Regardless, I actually, when I think about the story of us getting rejected by all these different funding sources and us still coming out on top, I like that better.
Yeah. It's like you get to prove to people, it doesn't matter because I'm going to win regardless.
Right.
Yeah.
We're gonna figure out how to find that cash,
Excellent.
which we did, and make this work for us. So that's good. It's a better story for us in the end.
And so you guys mentioned that you're in a revitalized area of town. How is that an advantage for you?
Yeah, so I think we are in a community that, like, for example, I had a movie. We launched the movie Harriet, and when we launched that movie, a lot of the schools had actually done events at our theater, and a lot of those teachers in the school, they said to us, like, listen, we never thought that this would be a Black-owned movie theater, because we are in a community where there wasn't really a lot of minorities in the community. It's a diverse community, but it's not a community. It's a Jewish community, for example. So it's a community that they didn't see a lot of like businesses opening up that were minority owned. So as a part of that too, a lot of the funding and the resources in this area are going towards different cities within Baltimore, and not necessarily this one. So Pikesville is one in which, again, in Baltimore County, is one in which the city is like, you know what, we want to try to shore up some funding for this area and kind of keep, because there's a lot of value, historic value to the space. And so they wanted to try to fund the area and try to prop up businesses. But there's some fine tuning, right? That I think that they need to get across with that communication, because we didn't actually see a lot of that funding source come our way.
Okay.
So,
and as far as like, now that you guys are there, what has the impact been on the community? I know you mentioned the school,
yes,
those things, but what's really been like the feedback of people coming in and, experiencing and even tell us what is that experience? So if I were to come to Maryland, and come to the movie theater, what would I expect on a Friday?
Sure. So remember I said in the beginning, right? So people go to movies really to inspire, to motivate, and to uplift them in some way. And so one of the things that we wanted to build is a culture where you are going to have an experience coming to Next Act Cinema. Because we also do things more than just movies. We do live jazz nights. We do artist nights, for example, like poetry, vocalists. We've done community talks. So we do more than just the movies on purpose. The community has really embraced us a lot. I think one of the things that Rob and I are really big on is making sure that we inspire young people. And so we do hire a lot of young people within the community. And I think that in of itself too is also extremely uplifting, because we were able to put to actually have create jobs for individuals that are local to this area. So that in of itself, Rob and I hadn't thought about that when we first opened up the business. So that's been really rewarding for us. But when you come here, you're going to have a feeling of, you know what, I can actually see a movie. I can potentially have a cocktail. I want to do it in a space that is inviting. Again, it's in a boutique setting. You don't feel like necessarily a number, or you don't feel lost, because for the most part, we are constantly trying to interact with you as a guest prior to your movie starting, right? But we're trying to make sure that we're interacting with you on a constant basis. And then when you leave, you're also feeling like, wow, that experience that we had in XX Center, that's how it should be done.
Wow. Yeah, that's really powerful and interesting. I love it. How are you guys getting, because I feel like you have mentioned, some star power coming out and, really just getting the support of other people in the area, especially with the movies. What does that process look like, and how are you getting, those powerful players? Kendra, are you part of, helping get that together? I'm just really interested on the back part of that.
Yeah, actually, so we've been really blessed in that the movie theater has had such buzz. We haven't had to do as much outreach in order to draw people. The theater, it's doing the work for us. People are coming to us proactively. The word of mouth is basically what we've been using. So a friend tells a friend, and then next thing you know, you've got people in our theater who are coming from California or Nevada or Atlanta. So cool. Yeah, to be supportive, to say we came specifically to be in your theater. So that's really fantastic. And then on social media, there's a lot of buzz there. In fact, sometimes Tony and I talk about this. We'll all of a sudden get hits on social media or, get outreach where we're not even sure where it came from, because it's not yet, I wouldn't yet call it viral, but it's got a lot of momentum behind it, which is really good. So we're lucky to be in that position.
Yeah, when I saw it, I think I saw it on LinkedIn, and I was like, okay, I don't know who these people are, but I'm gonna find out. So, the story for me, that did it. I was like, I really need to know who's doing this, because, we don't always have a lot of opportunities to showcase our talents, and everyone's not going to do that. So if they're not, then how do we become that vessel to, give access to other people? And that's the part, that's what the podcast is for too, because there are a lot of people who don't get to share their story, or we don't know who they are, and we need, other people to be that vessel or that platform for them to do that. And that's what I saw in you all when I read the story, and I was like, I need to know what's going on. Like and when you all told me that you do more than just the movies, I was like, well, what else? It's everything. That's like a whole party. So that's how I felt. I was like, that sounds really cool. So what are the next steps, as far as the movie goes? I know people are probably like, are you going to come to our city? Are you going to franchise it? How do you take something that is pure and genuine, right?
Yes.
And the intentions are so good. I feel like, because, Kendra, you said that the momentum, it just kept going because people wanted to be a part of it, right? Yeah. And so how do you mimic that moving forward into other cities or other areas of town?
Yeah.
Whoever wants to answer.
You want to take that, or baby, you want me to take it?
Yeah, I'll start. So I think we really like the community feeling that we've created in Pikesville, right? So we're there, we're part of a community. Tony is really big on hiring staff from around the area. So people who are within the Pikesville or Baltimore community, especially young Black kids. Like that, I love that we have the opportunity to create that within that community. What Tony and I talk a lot about is which other cities or areas can we take that to? So we are looking at doing that in the Alexandria area. So we're already in talks with the city of Alexandria to figure out what a timeline would be like to open up another one here. We are, I would call it, we explore the idea of franchising. I think we're really big on how do we create a pretty standard, amazing customer experience. So we've got to make sure we've nailed that completely in our location before we package it up and give others the opportunity to use our brand and our name. We want to make sure that it always meets the standard that we've set. And then the third piece is, we're called Next Act Cinema at the Pikes, but overall the business is Next Act Entertainment. So it is not just limited to theaters. There's plenty of opportunity, which Tony can talk about, in the entertainment space that I think we've created a foundation for, and it's a springboard.
Cool. Yeah, tell us about the entertainment piece.
Yeah, so that piece is interesting, right? Because one of the things that we've realized is that we have a venue where we can actually showcase a lot of talent, right? And so and also host these events. So like I said, artistry night, poets. One of the things that we're trying to get into for the most part right now are also comedians. So we thought about, Amazon is now doing like live kind of comedy shows. So we thought about doing something that we can stream from our venue, comedians that are either local or national on a national stage from our theater. So that's an avenue that we can get into, because again, I think with having the space, it opens up the opportunity and the doors for so many other people that have not gotten their name out there. They don't get the recognition that they should. And so we want to be able to provide that kind of platform for them. In addition to Kendra's point, we want to scale up. We've had individuals from, asking about, hey, North Carolina, what about Florida? And for us, with the movies comes a message. And so, like, Harriet, for example, there was a strong message, but that movie wasn't like a huge national release. And that's important for us, right? And so the more theaters that we can have open, the more we can show movies, right, that cater to things that have a message for our community. Black and Blue, for example, like I said, Harriet, Bad Boys is a different level, but it's also exciting, right? And so that's really important. I think I mentioned this before. Tyler Perry needs to show his movies somewhere, right? And so we want to be that somewhere he decides to show those movies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think so. The whole thing with the comedians and being able to allow them to come and, have a platform for people. I mean, that's truly amazing. I didn't even think about, that type of impact that you'll be having, in addition to, being able to show the movies and getting people to come out. So do you have like a lot of people approaching you guys with different business ideas? I mean, I could just imagine the type of, I just want to know, I'm curious, what are the crazy things that people are asking, because, and then how do you sift through all of that madness, right? Like, okay, that's trash. This is okay. Like, let's, how do you take things seriously, right? Because somebody had to take you seriously.
Yeah. And Kendra can actually piggyback off this too, but it's all about, okay, what is the right type of partnership, right? And so, for example, we've had companies that say, hey, you know what? We want to bring our Black-owned water into your theater, right? We have a Black-owned candy shop, right? We also have a Black-owned popcorn store. So it's like, and some of those we actually have brought into our theater. And a big part of what we're doing too is that we've just opened up the opportunity to advertise on our screens. And we didn't think about that from before, but what that does is it opens up an opportunity for a lot of local, because I'll be honest with you, before we opened this theater, I didn't know there were this many minority-owned businesses in this area. And so now we're giving them the opportunity to showcase their business to all of our viewers. That's huge.
That's
That
major.
So, we want to be able to showcase their brands just as much as they're supporting us. So it kind of goes hand in hand. But we do get a lot of different vendors, requesting that we carry their product. Someone had request from Chicago had requested that we carry their toiletry like device in our bathroom. It was
It's a lot of things.
A lot of things.
But it's cool though, because like I said, it's all about what's the right partnership for us. But I'm extremely pleased though that we're able to have a business that allows other businesses to also hopefully shine. So that's kind of the cool thing about this.
Yeah. And this is where Tony and I have a good partnership, because Tony is really good at ideas, right? So when other people have ideas, he gets another idea. So there's a lot of ideating. And then I'm here on the side to help him figure out which ones can we actually execute,
right?
Which ones can we actually take into the theater. At the end of the day, for the foreseeable future, job number one for us is to make sure that we show movies in an environment where our customers, our guests, have a really fantastic experience.
Right.
And so that is really the guiding light for which of those ideas we should pursue. Is, does it enhance, does it enrich the experience you have as a guest when you walk through the door? Mm-hmm. If it doesn't, if it creates noise or it's just clutter, then that won't make it, because at the same time as us being able to lift up others, there's a lot of people who are trying to ride the coattails too. Yeah. So sifting through that is really important. And at the end of the day, it's just doing what's right by our customer is the right answer for our business.
Yeah. And I really want to speak to the partnership as well. There's another couple, right, that are in partnership with you all. So how does that dynamic work, and how do you, I know you briefly mentioned you've been knowing them for 15 years, and anyone who's starting a business or doing, something similar to this or not, how do you sift through those dynamics, and what are the either complications or the things that, you have to realize, either playing to each other's strengths and weaknesses, how does that work? Because it's not always going to be perfect.
Yeah. No, I think so. That was one of the hardest things that I think Kendra and I had talked about prior to us opening up the business, because we knew that we couldn't necessarily do it on our own, because it's too much of a heavy lift, right? But you also have to make sure that you have the right partner. That's extremely important. And before we opened up, we had also gotten outside counsel, and a lot of them said, no, absolutely, you should not open up a business with your friend. Why would you ever do that, right? Partner with someone that has a different skill set than you, right? And I think for this one, Rob and I had to take a step back and have a very, very serious conversation around what motivated us around trying to open up a business. And we obviously had different motivating factors. But for the most part, when it came down to it, we both knew, especially coming from the industry that we've come from, it was all at the end of the day about the guest and creating a guest experience. On top of the fact that I needed to make sure that, okay, to your point, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are my strengths? And what are my weaknesses? So I had to be very honest and had enough emotional intelligence to be able to tell Rob, here's what I'm not very good at, and I need you to uplift me on. Mm-hmm. And he has done the same thing for me, right? Like, I'm very OCD when it comes to the detail around certain things. And Rob oftentimes isn't as much, but we balance each other out, because Rob will say to me, Tony, you might not need to take things that seriously, and then I'll kind of, maybe take a notch down, and then vice versa. I'll say, hey, Rob, this is an extremely important part of the business. For example, if the projectors aren't working, do we have a backup plan, right, for the project? So it's that balance, right, and knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses. And it can work. Like I said, a lot of people telling us don't do it, but it can work. And it's constant communication. It's constantly discussing, why did we open up this business? Because there have been times, I'll tell you, that it had gotten really hard, especially in the beginning. It was extremely challenging when we couldn't, for example, we didn't have the name that we have now, but we weren't getting the movies. Right, we were getting certain movies, but not necessarily the ones that we wanted. And
so how does that process work? If I didn't realize that you don't just get the movies.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of it is working with the right contacts at a lot of these studios, and making sure that you pay your bills, for example. You stay in constant communication with them. You're doing the right thing in terms of like projecting it out to the consumer. So it's a lot of building the relationship over time. And at the end of the day, let's be honest, it comes down to, are you providing them revenue, right, for their movie? And so one of the things this is why our experience is so important to us, because we have a lot of repeat customers, and those customers come and see our movie. So when we get ready to pay our BRRs, which are our box office reports, they say, you know what, Next Act Cinema, even though they're a 2-cinema theater, they perform just as well as a lot of the big offices. For example, Harriet was our #1 selling movie, whereas everywhere else, Avengers was #1 in probably every movie house. But that was because, again, we focus on our community. We make sure that we have a great experience, but we're able to do it in a way that is different. Like, we did an event around Harriet. Like, we blasted it out to volunteer organizations, to schools. Like, we take an active approach in making sure that our comp score, that's what it's called a comp score, versus the other theaters in our area, that our comp score stays high.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to understand, when you say you had to know the right people to get the movies there. So I'm not in that space, and for the listeners, right? They're not in that space. They don't understand. So if I wanted to open a movie theater, I would think like, oh, I'm a movie. I can just show whatever movie. And so you have to be able to prove that you can bring the audience out. And so how do you prove that before you have an audience?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So that's hard. I think because a lot of movie theaters, when you initially open up, even a lot of studios, they'll do a comparison around the target area. Okay, so where is this individual opening up a movie? And is there a lot of competition, where if there's too much competition, then that movie theater probably won't be that viable. So we're not close enough to a lot of big theaters. We are and we're not. We're not close enough to a lot of big theaters where it's going to be a huge amount of competition for them, because it's just like any other business, right? You don't want to, if I'm providing your product and I have a franchise, I'm not going to cannibalize the franchise down the block in order to make sure that yours is successful, right? And so we're not close enough. So one of the things that we did was we engaged someone on the inside that was really, really adept at making sure that he had the partnerships from other movie theaters and studios he's worked with in the past. We work with him, and he helps us to get the movies. And so now we've been able to produce the revenue. And so they're saying, you know what, does Next Act Cinema want this movie? Like, that's the kind of relationship that we have now, is that he'll get a call and say, hey, we want to release this movie. Is Next Act Cinema willing to play it? And that's pretty powerful, to be in that kind of position. That's exactly where we knew that we could get to, but they didn't know that. So we had to kind of build that reputation over time.
Right. And Kendra, what's the preparation that you have to have, for each week, right? Or to make sure you have movies ready to come out each month? You don't want to come up on a month and where's the movie? People are expecting, they have expectations now of, Next Act, we want to go there. What are they going to provide us? So how do you prepare for each month, in advance, or how much in advance are you preparing?
Well, one of the things with the movie business is that you are dependent upon the success of a movie in order to have success in the theater itself. Mm-hmm. So to help manage against that, because as you can imagine, that can make your business a bit unpredictable, right? You don't know how well Just Mercy is going to do or how well The Photograph is going to do. What we do know is who our customer is, and we know what type of movie our customer will turn out for. And so we purposely try to source those movies. Part of what, Tony, I don't know if you mentioned this, but was how he actively pushed to bring Harriet to our theater, despite the fact that the booker was like, it's not going to do that well. And Tony was like, actually, it will do that well, because we know our community. We know what they're interested in. And we shocked him. We totally surprised him with the success of it. The fact that it was our highest grossing movie in the history of Next Act is pretty phenomenal. The other thing that Tony touched on that's really important as you plan for the future and you forecast how this business is going to perform is to take a bit of control over each movie by structuring packages / promotions and events around it, right? So what we're doing with the photograph for Valentine's Day is creating a whole experience. Again, you'll hear me say this over and over again. It goes back to what is our guest experience like in the theater. And so the photograph experience will come with champagne, and our servers will be dressed differently in honor of a romantic occasion. You know, there's like a proper feel around it that we then advertise and market through social channels as well as in the theater. So having that proactive view on how you plan ahead for each of the months so that there's a theme and events. Right. We can proactively source events, right? The more people know about us, the more they want to make it a place where they come to celebrate special occasions, to throw a really special party for somebody. And in that, we'll actually then not just show the movies that are in the theaters, but we'll show other movies that they might be interested in, where we have permission to do so. So there's a lot of ways where you can manage around the cyclicality that might come in the movie business, or the unpredictability, manage that a lot. So it just takes some forward planning.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so before you guys were in the movie industry, I know you guys had mentioned that, you know, you had like movie nights or there was a theater at someone else's house, but how did you start to learn that industry? Because you weren't initially in it, right?
That's right.
Right.
No,
so like when you're starting a business, it's like, okay, well, I'm not really in this industry, but this is what I want to do. So what does that look like, you know, for people? Because I think a lot of times we get stuck and we're like, well, I don't know enough. I got to go do this. I got to do this. And people never start. So for people who are in that position, what would you say to them to help them understand, you know, that you had to learn your craft and you're continuously learning what you're doing to be able to progress in your dream and in your business and making it grow?
Yeah. So I guess that was the scary part about it, right? Is that we didn't know anything about this industry and about this business. We did know, though, that we had to kind of fight against that fear of saying, you know what, because we don't know about it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it, right? Just because we we don't know anyone that's we didn't have any mentors or anything, didn't mean that it wasn't going to be a good business opportunity. And so there was a lot of risk involved, and I think with this, right? And so again, with me kind of being a little bit of a planner, I had to then say, okay, well, Rob, here's the thing, how do, is this a viable pilot, or is this something that we're trying to do long term, right? And how do we hedge ourselves against some type of risk and some type of potential failure? That's kind of how I think. And I didn't want to maybe think that way, but I would encourage, anyone that's trying to open up a business to think around, okay, so if this doesn't potentially work, what's the exit plan, and how quick can I get out without incurring a huge financial load, right? And so I plan for that. I plan for the possibility that this might not work out. And so with planning that, it gave me a little bit of peace to know that something that we could learn, right? Even though we didn't know a lot about it. Again, 3 in the entire country, right? And we didn't have anything to kind of be our blueprint. And so we did a lot of research. We did a lot of investigation. We did a lot of walkthroughs at movie theaters to figure out what's the design of the space. And Kendra actually designed this space for us. But we looked a lot at like the details, and we talked a lot to people. And so that's kind of how it started. I mean, the research, the planning, and then also having an exit plan gave me a lot of peace as to know that if this did not work out, I wouldn't, leverage my family in a way that we couldn't get out of it.
Right. And so and I wanted to ask about that too. Well, one, I have 2 questions. So one of them is, how many kids do you all have? So you and the other couple, and what's the impact that this is having on your family?
Well, Okay. That's a whole different dynamic, and Kendra might have a different perspective than me. But so Rob came into this family business for the most part with two kids.
Okay.
And his kids are older, right? So his kids are 4, and Logan is I think two and a half, possibly 3.
They're older than our kids, is what Tony means.
They're much older than our kids, and so they had a little bit of a structure.
Okay.
And so me not being a parent, I used to always call Rob, well, what do you mean you can't come here on a Saturday? Like, you have a basketball tournament. Like, we have a business. Like, what are you doing, right? So I didn't understand the dynamic at play when it comes to having kids and trying to own a business until about two months ago.
Oh, looky there.
And when Kendra and I had our first child, Austin, and so our life has totally changed. And it's a new type of motivation. It's a new type of work. It's a new type of adjusting. But it's doable, right? And so Kendra and I, we've always been super, super corporate. Like, that's how we are. Everything is for the most part pretty structured. This has completely changed the way that we plan for our life. Not getting any sleep, an hour of sleep every night. Changing Pampers in all different colors and all different shapes of Pampers. It is really, and then too, we have to also try to remember that we are husband and wife too. And that also is a huge part of it as well when you have a business. So family dynamics did, it took a toll, I think, in the beginning, because I didn't understand. And so I applaud every working mom, working dad, especially the ones that are doing it by themselves. All kind of kudos for out there hustling and working and grinding every single day, trying to make that dream happen.
It's a total beast.
It is.
Yes.
So now that you have a 2-month-old.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what do you think the impact is going to be on his life?
We think really positive, actually.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I look forward to is, as he gets older, him being able to go with his dad to the theater, right? We've got all kinds of baby carriers that you can attach to your body to allow him to be right there, front and center as we build out the theater.
Bossing me around.
Yeah, so we fully expect him to be a part of it. I think it's such a gift to be able to give to your kid, where he can be a part of a family business, watch his parents really build something. Tony talks about creating a legacy now for Austin all the time. So I think it's changed the shape and nature of the work that we do, because it feels like, you're leaving something for him, even if he doesn't want to be in the theater business or to have the businesses, if nothing else, just demonstrating and showing him the entrepreneurial spirit that hopefully he can grow up with and own over time.
There's a trend I feel like I see especially now that I've been meeting so many different business owners or corporate leaders, and I don't think that it's by accident. Their kids, they see the work ethic, they understand, and they want to be in the space, and they don't want to work for someone. They want to do their own thing. They get that. And a lot of what I see, like, for example, I had another lady. She has a kind of like a nap spa. It's a float spa. So you float in these and these, I don't know if I call them tubes or whatever, but you float in there and sea salt. Yeah. And so she's never had a job before. Her family, she grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, and that's just what she knows, Yeah. And she started that business, but she also, used to have some other businesses, and she's very young. And so, she doesn't know what it means to get up and go work for someone else. She only knows how to produce her own paycheck.
That's right.
And that's a huge, I think, different mindset and mind shift when you grow up like that and you see your parents do it, and that's how you see the world. And so I think that is phenomenal, and and you guys will probably be raising a little entrepreneur yourself, and so to have a family business is very powerful because you're not just affecting your life, you're affecting others after you. And so one of the things I wanted to ask is, as you've been going through this, you've also grown a whole lot and, learned a lot of things. And so what can you say you feel like you've learned the most out of, just the partnership and going through the business and, creating a family and, moving forward? What are the things that you've been discovering about yourselves that you didn't know before?
So I think that, at the core of kind of who I was, like I always had a very, very strong like work ethic. I learned that from my parents. Right. But who I am, I think, has evolved obviously over time, and it should. Right. I think as we get better, we continue to change who we are for the better, right? So Robert Frost has this poem, right? And it says, two roads diverge in a yellow wood, and I take the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And for me, I came from the inner city of Chicago, right? And, it was gang-ridden. So I understand how it is to grow up in that type of environment. And then, seeing, coming to Baltimore and seeing kind of what these young kids are struggling with and the impact that it has on their life. And for me, that poem was significant because sometimes you have two paths to take, right? And the one that you choose may not necessarily be the one that was destined for you, but it's the one that you chose, and it's one that you have to live with. And then you oftentimes sometimes just make it what it is, right? And so I don't necessarily know what the future holds. But what I do know is that what we're trying to build here together is impacting people. We wanted to open up a movie theater. We never knew that it was going to have this much impact on empowerment, Black empowerment. We were invited to do a TV show, for example, around the business, right? So we never knew it was going to have this much of an impact on the lives of other individuals and on people, and it being an inspiring story. So that in of itself has changed the feeling for me when I come here every single day and when I talk to my staff and say, guys, like, you are the face of Next Act Cinema. You talked about Austin. Because media is digital now, Austin will forever be able to research, even when Kendra and I are gone from this earth, that his parents opened up First Black-owned theater in Maryland. Like, that's powerful, right? He'll always be able to have that. And so those type of things that motivates us to continue to make sure that we build this theater into something that is definitely giving back, but also we leave Austin with something that is of value and significant to either him and other people. That is inspiring for me personally as I walk through these doors every day.
Wow. What about you, Kendra?
Well, hard to follow Tony on that. So I'll tell you that what I've learned it's actually really tactical with the sheer number of things that we've taken on since we launched the theater in March of last year. And actually, we started working on the theater from September of 2018. The thing that I think I've learned the most is how important it is to prioritize and manage your time super closely. Tony and I both have full-time jobs. For my job, I was traveling every single week. We now have a kid that we threw in there, plus the movie theater. Plus, like I said, this is actually Tony's third business outside of his full-time job. So we have so many things. I think at one point our friends looked at us and they really said, "You are doing the most. You have got to figure out how to reel it in." And then we announced that we were pregnant. They were like, "What is wrong with you? How many things can you take at once?" They weren't wrong. They weren't wrong. So we've had to learn how to just clear space and be really purposeful about what we spend our time doing. I am constantly saying to Tony, I'm like, do we really have time to take on that other thing? I can't find the time. So yeah, it is learning to prioritize and manage time really, really closely is
Yeah.
the number one lesson.
I love that you said that, though, because, I mean, doing all of those things
Yeah.
gets you to the place of where you are, right? If you weren't doing all those things, maybe you wouldn't be in that space.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
that's how I feel sometimes, because I meet people similar to you, and I feel like I have a lot of that in me. I have a job, and I'm doing this, and I'm a mother, and my daughter is 5. And so, I'm doing all of these things,
Yeah.
but it's because of what's inside of me that won't stop. And
Right.
so if I stop and think about it, I might not keep going. And
Right.
so that's
Yeah.
how I feel, and
That's right.
I
Right.
applaud you guys, because you just keep going no matter, even though your friends are like, "What are you doing?" That's a lot, but
Right.
to you don't think it is,
No,
right?
no. It's just
Yeah. So
everyday life.
say it again.
I said, no, this is just a norm. It's a new norm for us, right? Having a baby, doing real estate, doing the movie theater, doing health, regular job. Like it's a norm. And Kendra, she said it. You try to figure out how to create space, and then you're also married,
Yeah.
right? So like, that's another job, right? So it's like we have to figure out a way. We have to figure out a way to reconnect with each other. You know what I mean? And so it's.
How do you find the time to create that space, right?
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's oftentimes when we're changing Pampers, or it's oftentimes when we are at night, maybe we're enjoying a glass of champagne. But one of the things Kendra is really big on this, is she's always telling me to check in, right? Check in. You got to check in with me, right? And let's have date night, right? We have to plan for it. Let's get a sitter, tonight. And I'm always, thinking, okay, well, but wait a minute though. I have to answer this email. Someone is emailing me about trying to do an event. Like someone wants to do karaoke. So Kendra settles me down. So finding the right partner, not just in business, but also in life, is also important. And someone that can help motivate you, but also not doing it in a way where it distracts or takes away from you, but it's like encouraging, right? And so we find times at the weirdest moments, right? Like we were, for example, last night watching The Mandalorian, right? And on Disney Plus, because it was our moment to watch, what is it? Baby Yoda. Yeah. We were watching Baby Yoda and we were just laughing our heads off, right? But it's like, you it's the new norm. You try to find slots of time to make for each other with all this craziness that you have going on in your life.
Sure.
It's also important to give props to the people that support us. So my mom is like a superhero. She has just swooped in and helped us so much, helped us create space for ourselves, where she'll say, I'm coming down to your house and taking the baby. You guys go out, have brunch, go actually see the movies that play in your theater. Right? Like she has been fantastic in helping us try to create some space. And I don't want to oversell it to your listeners. Okay. It's not like we're over here just living the life without hardship. Like everything we're smiling right now, but everything we're talking about takes a ton of work. And it's fun to reflect on it and be like, whew, we are making it. But it takes a lot of coordination and effort, and we don't do it alone. There's a lot of support around us. So.
Yeah. So my last question, which I ask all my guests, are, how do you continue to discover your best self? Because at the end of the day, you guys are creating this platform for other people and for yourselves and your family. But, we're living through your journey. We're learning through your story. And that's what's important, is to learn your story and to understand, why it's important and the impact that you're making. So how do you continue to discover your best self?
I'll finish it up. Kendra, you can go ahead and start.
Discovering your best self for me means that there's a bit of fearlessness. You continue to take risks, which Tony and I do just regularly. And they're real risks, right? So us being involved with the movie theater is there's tons of risk around, the partnership that Tony's got with a good friend of his. There's tons of risk from a financial standpoint, right? And how much money we have poured into that business in order to make it successful. So we put a lot on the line in order to do it. And we went into it, as Tony said, eyes wide open, right? Mm-hmm. So it's part of why we talk about what happens if it doesn't work. We acknowledge the risk. We look it dead in the eye, and we still run towards it. And I think that's a really big part of discovering your best self, is just not being afraid of the challenge. And then I think the other piece is just being really curious. We aren't, again, afraid of going into something that we haven't done before, because we feel like we can always learn. In fact, it'll only make us better humans if we do learn something totally new. So the endless curiosity that I think we have between the two of us, the four of us, if you include Rob and Melinda, just being really curious about what the next thing is and running towards it.
Right. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And also I think for me, and this is probably with Kendra too, it's also just about being disciplined, being extremely, extremely disciplined in your life with everything that's going on. Will Smith, I love Will Smith for this. He always said that fear isn't real, right? Fear isn't real, right? It's more of an emotion, right? On the other side of that fear is pure happiness. And I constantly say that to myself. Don't be afraid of taking the risk, taking the challenge. At the end of the day, you will learn something. I tell Rob this. If this fails, I have learned, one, how to open up a movie theater, but also how to structure a business in a different way, in different capacity, right? The fact that, we aren't necessarily, great or anything, but the path to trying to get there is still ahead of us. That's what motivates me, right? And also stop doing, I read this quote, stop doing basically SHIT, right? That doesn't matter, right? Something that's purposeful in your life that gives you value, that adds value to other people, right? And so for me, like that is me constantly evolving, right? And me constantly staying grounded to knowing that I gotta drown out all the extra noise, do what is meaningful to me and do what's meaningful to other people, because it comes back to you. Right. So being disciplined, being fearless, no matter what it is. You don't have to open up a movie theater, but whatever it is you do, don't be afraid to at least take a risk and fail. Like, you have to fail. This movie theater might fail, right? But I'll tell you, it's been an amazing, amazing journey. And I've learned a lot. I've been able to partner with one of my closest friends. I've been able to partner with my wife, being able to give Austin some type of legacy, however he turns out, turns it out to make it in the future. But, just go into it with the, full steam ahead, and just continue to not be afraid to take on the challenge.
Right. Those were awesome answers. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So tell everyone how they can find you. And where you are located, if they're ever in the Maryland area. Yes. And I'll have to bring my friends. We'll have to come out there and definitely experience. I want to experience, the scenery, the entertainment, the music, all of that stuff. So so that sounds really cool. So tell us, how can we find you? Sure. Where should they reach out if they want to, and where exactly you're located in Maryland?
Sure. So they can find us a couple different ways. You can find us on Instagram at NextActCinema. That's our IG. And then also our website is www.nextactcinema.com. We also have a Facebook page as well, Next Act Cinema. But we are located in Baltimore County, city called Pikesville, Maryland, 921 Reisterstown Road. And we are we are literally in an older building that has a huge New York style type marquee. Oh. You can't miss it. It is a landmark in the Pikesville area. As you're driving down, it's on the main street in Maryland and in Reisterstown Road. You can't, seriously, the building's been here since 1930s. And so we're super excited about that. So again, Instagram, Facebook, the web, but also you can just come and visit. 921 Ricerstown Road, Pikesville, Maryland.
Come see us.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you for this powerful interview, powerful couple. I mean, this was it. Like I said, this is the first power couple I've had on here, and you guys definitely just set the bar. So thank you so much for agreeing and also handling all the technical problems at first, but we got through it.
Oh, well, we love it. Awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, kudos to you for doing this podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Awesome,
and it was
getting everyone's message out.
Yeah, I was fine. I had to find you guys. I'm like, who am I messaging? Whoever it is, somebody will let me know. I was like, well, let me just see if I can find them. But no, I seriously appreciate it, because this is really, like I said, it's important for us to get these stories out and to just show that we are capable of doing things like this, and having families and partnering together and building something major that's impacting others.
Stronger together.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Discover your best self. All right, now.
Thank you for listening to Discover Your Best Self. Don't forget to subscribe and comment. Follow us on Instagram at Discover Your Best Self.